Hello, and thank you for joining our Teach In for 21st Century webinars brought to you by the David Horowitz Freedom Center and the Glazov Gang. I am your host, Annie Cyrus. Please use the Q&A box on your screen if you have any questions for our very special guest this evening, and I promise we will get to as many of them as we can after her presentation is over. With that being said, it is my honor and privilege to introduce our guest this evening, Noor bin Ladin. She is a Swiss citizen who lived most of her life a private life until last September she decided to come out and speak up in support of America and President Trump. She's also working on her first book, which I personally am very excited and look forward to reading. Hi, Noor. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Annie. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you. No, really, I greatly admire the David Horowitz Freedom Center, so it's an honor. So again, thank you.
Absolutely. We are all excited to hear your thoughts, so floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'd also like to thank everyone who's watching live because there's so much going on this week. And so I really appreciate everyone who tuned in to join us tonight live. We'll, of course, address recent events, but first I'll share my remarks and I think we'll have lots to cover in the Q&A anyway, but I'll start off with a quote from one of my favorite Ronald Reagan speeches, and I'll take it from there. So the speech is A Time for Choosing. We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening. Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended us by the founding fathers. This war Reagan referred to 56 years ago is still very much the same war today and is the same war we have been in for centuries. Good versus evil, truth versus lies, reality versus fakery, liberty versus tyranny. The nature of this war is covert, but make no mistake, tyranny has been at work since day one of America's inception, from the Newbury Conspiracy in 1783, all the way to the 2020 election plot to steal the White House. It is only thanks to the founding fathers' brilliance and wisdom that it will have taken it 244 years to finally reach this tipping point, where we face tyranny straight on once again. Indeed, it is known that this group of brave men are some of the most erudite beings to have ever walked this earth, and that the Declaration of Independence and the US Constitution are the fruits of vast knowledge on various subjects, ranging from history, human societies, warfare, and philosophy. Their combined brains led to the creation of what we can objectively describe as the single greatest nation in the history of the world. For it succeeded where all others failed. It secured freedom and kept tyranny at bay. By recognizing human beings for what we are, created free and equal by God, with rights only derived from Him and not by any other groups of individuals, namely government, they secured our freedom and dignity. They furthermore instituted a system of governance with checks and balances to keep those rights from being infringed by others, and in their foresight, also provided recourse for infringements to be rectified. To continue with an excerpt from Reagan's speech. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. So some may be thinking, why is it that someone like me appreciates America so much? Well, it's partly due to my personal life experience, and also because I've opened some actual history books, something which has been systematically suppressed, discouraged, or worse, replaced by garbage narratives for decades, and exceedingly so the past few years. But thankfully, we have David Horowitz's books to remedy that, so that's good. Back to my personal journey. Since a child, I was aware that freedom was a great gift and one I should cherish. My mother is Swiss and my father is from Saudi Arabia. Due to the circumstances surrounding their separation and their divorce, I was raised in Switzerland, fortunately, as opposed to the Middle East. This stark contrast of how different, between my life and how entirely different it would have been with all the limitations on my freedom it would have entailed, made me deeply appreciative of these values we hold so dear. Totalitarianism comes in many forms, in various cultures and isms. I understood that early on. In addition, my frequent travels to America from the age of 3 onwards further cemented my love for America, its people, and the American way of life. In fact, for most of my life, America has felt like a second home to me. And while I'm here sitting in Switzerland at 1 a.m., I may add, my heart is very much with you over there right now. While my story is peculiar in some respects, the reality is I'm far from alone. Millions across the world who live in other countries, some more oppressive than others, and some alarmed at the rate at which they are losing their freedoms since the China virus was unleashed on the world. We all love America and are rooting for you to defeat tyranny, for all of our fate also depends on it. Despite the lies the globalists have spread, we know the truth about your nation and President Trump. In a gist, as I once wrote, America is the greatest country in the world, period. Once you understand the gift and incredible sacrifice the founding fathers secured for future generations, one cannot help but feel patriotic and invested in these ideals, regardless of origin or nationality. This is why you see all the marches for the president, from Hong Kong to Nigeria, London, and Japan. And it is for this reason that I decided to join all those who stand up to defend her. The fact that we are in this grave hour in the war, the urgency, and that I knew that I would have an immediate platform simply because of my circumstance. I simply couldn't stay silent and watch as the country that I love and the world stands to go down the ant-heap of totalitarianism. Indeed, more than ever, today's situation demands we stand and speak up. We are at the very edge of the precipice, probably dangling over it right now. I know the situation seems extremely bleak, especially since yesterday, to say the least. What has transpired the past 4 years and the past 3 months up to now is so wicked, it is hard to describe with words. But I am very hopeful, optimistic, and 100% undeterred. The American spirit is stronger than ever before thanks to President Trump, who has ignited the spirits and awakened the minds of millions of Americans. And they are not going anywhere. On the contrary, they are growing in numbers. With, I'm sure, many are realizing finally what is at stake since the past 24 hours. Yes, these are the times that try men's souls, as Thomas Paine wrote, I quote, "The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us. The harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. Heaven knows how to put a proper price upon its goods, and it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. Each one of us can and must make a difference. There is so much pressure, mockery, harassment, ostracism. We must stand up for our neighbor, our friend, our colleague against this massive slander campaign waged against over half of the population. They are putting all their might towards demoralizing, shaming, and confusing us. We cannot let them win. Despite all their efforts to silence and censor us, we must continue to speak and share real news and information with those around us. We hold the line. I'll end with a reading before questions. Someone who joined my Telegram channel a few days ago sent me one of the most moving letters I've ever received in my life. And I asked him if I could share it, and he said yes. So I'm reading it because while it is directed to me, it definitely can apply to anyone else who stands for what is right. So it's right here. I framed it because it's so beautiful. So I'll read it from here. It's in response to a couple of letters that I wrote and published on my website in the fall. So my letter to Noor bin Ladin. Miss bin Laden, my name is Kyle Price. I'll be honest, I don't remember the last time I wrote a real letter or email to someone. My apologies if I fumble through this. As I read your letter to America and Godspeed Patriots, I found some things that I recognized. Having recognized those things, I felt compelled to answer you. The first thing that I recognized was your love for the United States of America. You wrote of our founding fathers and their belief for something better. You wrote of the natural rights of mankind, that we are all created equal and free. You wrote of our heritage and freedom and hope. You write of the most fundamental thing that has allowed the United States of America to be an amazing land. The fact that you know that history and that you cite it to us is a testament to your love for the United States of America and for freedom. I do not know if it was difficult for you to write your letters, but they lead me to recognize the second thing that I noticed, your courage. Having written anything at all about supporting President Donald J. Trump shows an amazing amount of grit and courage. You damn near put me on my heels, woman. Then you continued on writing about patriotism and freedom. You called us out. It's not easy citing our history to us. That takes a lot of courage. I'm sure you are well aware of just how prideful we can be. But Miss bin Laden, you did call me out, and that shows a type of courage that piques my interest. I guess I should introduce myself. A few comments in a chat room isn't enough to really know someone. Like I said, my name is Kyle Price. I'm no orator or pen man, just a simpleton from Oklahoma that has been trying to pay attention to what is going on. Hell, just writing this is taking me a while, but I believe that it is worth it. I work in manual labor, a jack of all trades type, if you will. I mainly focus on working and trying to find some stability. I'm no better or worse than any other man. I guess the best way to put it is that I'm your average Okie, nothing special. But I still have emotions that have been tossing my boat around as if it is a raft in the oceans. Your words awaken something inside that is helping me find peace and resolve during this time of trial and tribulation. Ms. bin Laden, you called yourself an unlikely messenger. Though that statement may be true, I believe there is a better word for it, appropriate messenger. Freedom is not a gift for one person or nation. It is a gift and a right to humanity. The patriots of the United States of America need their patriot allies outside the United States, just as much as you may need us. It is not only my duty as a citizen of the United States of America to stand with all patriots that represent peace and freedom, but it is an honor and a joy to stand by those patriots as a fellow human being. I may be a simpleton and I may not know how to show my support for President Trump in an immediate fashion, but I will do my best to support those who stand with him and support freedom. Ms. bin Laden, it may not be much, but I offer gratitude for your call. I offer my friendship as well as support in any fashion given that I'm able to do so. Thank you for your time, Ms. bin Laden, and keep up the good fight. Sincerely, Kyle Timothy Price. And as I said, I'm reading this to you because it applies to all of you. It can apply as much for me as it can for you or does for you who is standing up. So thank you very much.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that letter. Beautiful. Someone actually commented very strong and emotional. And I have read your letter to America. I consider myself an American. I already told you I have a different background, but today I'm a proud American. And I think for me, the main thing that popped at me, Noor, if you don't mind me saying, was your truthfulness. Uh, the way you wrote that letter, there was so much truth into it, which I agree with him. It takes a lot of courage. We live in a time where telling the truth could definitely come back to haunt you for real. But you had such a truthfulness into that letter that definitely got my attention. So thank you for being truthful.
You know, Annie, I'm not a writer. The letter that I wrote in my letter to America is the first thing that I really wrote, and it came straight from my heart. I mean, obviously, I did write different things for university, you know, in my studies, but this is the first time that I really applied myself, and it really just flowed from my heart. It came quite naturally, I have to say. But thank you for saying that.
I think that's where the truthfulness comes from. It's you can feel it. It's not something that you sat there and you know choreographed or so. It's just raw truth, which I hope everyone in America reads it. But I do have a couple of questions. I do not want to miss questions by taking your time in the audience by me talking. So let me read you a couple of the questions. And then I also have a few questions. The very first question here is asking you that from your European experience, is America in a better position than Europe, or are we just going down in the same disastrous path?
That's a great question. I think if America wants a preview of what would await them if we can't reverse course, but I believe we will reverse course. America will reverse course, but you just have to look at Europe. The situation is dire here, much worse than in America, and it's a combination of many things. The European Union, the very socialist leaning governments from all countries. I mean, the Great Reset, the globalist machinations are much more, the plans are much more advanced here in Europe than they are in America. And this is why, and I mentioned it and I wrote it, but America really truly is the last outpost for freedom. And this is why the attacks that are taking place in your country are so brutal and virulent. I don't know if you can say that word in English. Yes, I should let your audience know that my mother tongue is French, although I'm completely fluent in English. When I'm writing, I have time to rummage in my brain to find the adequate vocabulary. When I'm speaking, it takes me a little bit longer because I am translating certain things in French, so apologies for not being as precise in speaking. But what I was saying is that's why you see that this it's almost, the word that I use is almost grotesque when you watch what's happening from the outside. The whole year of 2020, the way that it's so blatant, the way that they cheated, it reeks of desperation, from the outside when you watch. The problem is that, their machine, with all their apparatus, the mainstream media, the big tech, they've infiltrated also, the academia for so many years. It feels like a big machine, that is just going to roll over us. But if you look closely, it's so obvious. That's the word. It's very obvious what they're doing.
Yes, feels like they're not even trying to hide it anymore. And by they, I don't mean America or France. I mean everyone. Every country seems to just not hide it anymore, which makes it that much more scary to me, at least. But
well, at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat. There is this massive push for centralized world government. These are not my words. You know, you can watch clips of these leaders that called for a new order, new world order for decades, that have called for that. And now they've just rebranded it into something a bit, you know, trendy or more palatable, because we're wise to the term new world order. So now it's the Great Reset. And as I said, you know, they're trying to advance with these plans for total control in the hands of a few, with all countries, you know, borderless. It doesn't matter, they don't care about borders, where we're all monitored at the end of the day. And America is the one country, thanks to your constitution, especially thanks to your First Amendment and your Second Amendment, which you must guard with every cell in your being. You know, this is the biggest assault on these two. I mean, first 1A, but then, you know, which they're in the process of completely, you know, subverting, and then it will be 2A straight away. And I mean, Joe Biden already called, you know, he said he was going to take on the NRA. So it's there, you know, they're not hiding it, as you said, Annie. But yes, America is the last outpost that's stopping, and that is in their way from these plans, you know.
Agreed. And since you brought up what Biden is saying, this is kind of merge question of mine and one of the audience, but I called it a nightmare last night, but one of few very first moves Biden made as soon as taking office last night, I'm sure you're aware of it, was reversing the travel ban, which Democrats call Muslim ban, but he reversed that travel ban. Of course, for me, it's terrifying. It's a nightmare because I know who's going to come in, and I'm sure you do too, and most of our audience will too. But Europe did that already. In Europe, they just opened all the borders. They're like, come on in. I believe there was a point that they didn't even have to prove who they are. There was no birth certificate or identification. They would just claim to be a 12-year-old Mary Jane's, and they would accept that. So now Biden is about to do that here. Since you're in Europe and you've seen the effect firsthand, what do you think is going to come to America?
You have one advantage over us, and that's, you know, the ocean, you know, in between that part of the world where these terrorists are coming from. That being said, you know, you have a means of getting to the US. They're coming also from the southern border. There have been, you know, infiltrations of ISIS fighters coming through Central America. Obviously, airfare, we know. But listen, I always say, and as I said, you know, in the first question, just America needs to just look at what's going on in Europe. We live right now in a state of extreme discomfort, to put it mildly, but fear. You know, I mean, Switzerland is a bit better than other countries, but France is terrifying what's going on. A neighboring country to Switzerland, and the amount of, you know, terrorist attacks and in the name of Islam that have taken place in France in recent times is horrible. There are no words. You know, Samuel Paty, you know, in the fall, this teacher who was beheaded because he talked about, in one of his classrooms, about freedom of speech, and showed pictures of the Mohammed caricatures of Charlie Hebdo. And he was beheaded. And, you know, the media, they always try, for the past 20 years, they've tried to portray these terrorist attacks as, you know, loners that act out of lunacy and that it has nothing to do with Islam. You know, that's the lie that has been perpetrated for the past 20 years. Then once they realized that that lie wasn't working anymore because it was just too obvious, they moved on to, you know, or parallel, they started with this whole Islamophobia thing, that you can't say anything bad about Islam because otherwise you're an Islamophobe. So you have these two things going on at the same time in Europe, when the truth is, and I'll just take that example of the atrocious cold-blooded murder of Samuel Paty, the terrorist who committed the attack was aided and abetted by communities and encouraged, by communities of like-minded, Muslims across France, So this is one example. There are so many tragic cases other than Samuel Paty, but it's very, very frequent, more frequent than you guys hear in America, and it's going on all over. And it's not just murders, it's sexual, what's the word I'm looking for? Attacks.
Rape and
Yes. And ever since Angela Merkel opened the floodgates, in 2015, it's been nonstop. But the news just doesn't really cover it. I mean, I follow it because I want to know what's going on, and I know where to go find the information, but the mainstream media doesn't really address the issues.
I'm trying not to go
so
there.
No, I'm very disheartened by this move by Joe Biden you just mentioned, but it's very much in line with the 8 years of Obama in the White House, where there wasn't so much regard for the safety and security of Americans in many regards, with certain of the moves and decisions he's made, both domestically and abroad.
Well, Lord have mercy on us all. Next question. Well, the question starts with a compliment or a thank you note saying, thank you for staying up late to speak to us. Merci. I read a headline a few minutes ago that I hope I don't mispronounce his name, but Emmanuel Macron of France wants the US to increase its military role in the Middle East. Do you see other European countries insisting on this?
I haven't followed the latest news out of Europe since last night. Listen, I'm very much of the opinion that what President Trump was doing and has been doing, what President Trump did the past 4 years was extremely successful. His principled realism approach to foreign policy enabled him to succeed and reach heights no one even thought was possible. I mean, when you look at the situation where you look back to 1967 and the Khartoum conference, the Khartoum resolution, where all these Arab nations had gotten together to denounce Israel and say, no recognition of Israel, no peace with Israel, no negotiation with Israel. And we're coming from that conference back then in 1967, years of, war and conflict. The Middle East was just such a huge battlefield, right? And then in barely one term, you have President Trump, who managed to bring these countries, to the table and sign historic agreements with Israel. Nobody thought it was possible, after everything we'd witnessed the past, few decades. And he didn't start any new wars. He removed troops, so Macron calling for more troops to go into the Middle East, and also Biden apparently, I saw quickly on Twitter today, also saying he wants to send more troops to Iraq in light of the bombings. I think there is a push for a reversal to pre-Trump years to going back to how it was before, which was a situation of great instability, both over there and as a result, both for us over here.
Oh, he already started reversing a lot, but let me ask you this one. Besides sharing news that is true with people, what other steps do you suggest we take to save America? Do you see any signs of a spiritual renewal in America or Europe for Judeo-Christian values?
Yes, that's my instinctive answer. Absolutely. I do see that. I think, as I said, in my remarks, um, President Trump has reignited the American spirit, but also, awakened our minds, as I wrote, and for sure ignited a spiritual awakening too. And I see it with people around me, with a lot of people I'm talking with, also in America. Everything that's happened the past 4 years has brought a lot of people closer to God, and has, after years of slumber and years of propaganda, both to slander America, its values, its founders, and its relationship to God, there is definitely a renewal taking place right now, and it's most heartening to witness and to be a part of.
Talking about that, there's a question here that says, I keep seeing videos of old churches in Europe being burned. Does that get into the
Yes,
news in Europe? And is it actually
all it's happening on a almost daily basis. Several churches either burned, desecrated, vandalized. We only get the big ones in the headline, like Notre Dame, and I think the other one was in Nantes or Chartres. I don't Nantes, I think. Um, um, but every single day, there are attacks on churches across Europe. Yes.
well, between burning churches and taking down the statues and erasing history, I can only imagine where we all are going. I know you have a positive message, and I hope you're right, but I think, as you said, being at just 24 hours since what happened, I can't see any positive. How do you see it,
You
Noor?
know, you know, I talk about this with some of my friends, I speak with, during the day. We follow closely what's going on. And I don't know, I have just an unshakable faith that America will prevail. I don't know if it's from God, but I wake up every morning. I'm very hopeful, very optimistic. I go to sleep the same way, no matter what happens throughout the day, it doesn't waver. I can, attribute this to God, but also I'm not sure how or when. I don't have the answers. But I do believe that there will be a recourse to this grave injustice that this election has been. I echo the sentiments of people like Rush Limbaugh, who said on his show, I think it was yesterday, that he said, tentatively that he was towing the line, but in his opinion, and I agree, the election wasn't legitimate, and so the inauguration yesterday wasn't legitimate either. So at the end of the day, I was watching it and it felt like I was watching theater in some respects. I know that there's been so many attempts via the courts, different avenues that have been attempted to rectify, as I said, this grave injustice that haven't panned out yet, which only further proves, sadly, tragically, the rot, and the corruption at all levels of the infiltration at all levels of the government and the judicial system, of the institutions of America, that has been going on for decades and decades, as I wrote in my letter to America. This is not something that is new. That being said, while I don't know how or when, I do think that the public, and by the way, there was a hit piece written on me by Newsweek saying that I was calling for violence or a coup or whatever. It was just wildly twisted and clearly part of a campaign to try and take down Telegram, which is one of the last apps that we have. There's this whole narrative being pushed in the media that terrorists gather on Telegram to foment, our coups or whatever, and it's just not true. It was widely taken out of context. I post so many things on my Telegram channel, forward messages. I even put, Pepe memes in there just to go, so this is really wrong. But I'm not calling for any such thing. I'm talking about legal and constitutional avenues, just to be clear. But I think there will be a point, where already there's a lot of information out there, the 3 Navarro reports about the election fraud, which, Peter Navarro did such a great job at properly laying down in all the ways this election was a complete fraud. But more and more information, I think, will be put out in the public. It will be up to, some of us to dissect, some, how would you say, independent platforms. I'm thinking of Revolver, I'm thinking of Gateway Pundit. There are some still really good media, Epoch Times, of course, some still really good media outlets there that are relaying this information. I think more is going to come to light, to the point where the public will demand a rectification, whether it comes, these are unprecedented times. I don't know, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but whether it's going to be a commission that, will be set up in order to see how they can, reverse what's been going on. But maybe I don't know, maybe that's my unwavering faith, as I said, but I just don't see I don't see this Biden administration going forward for much longer. Again, it will be legal and constitutional, not a coup or, I don't know what. It needs to be done in the legality and to be in line with the Constitution. And this is something we can all appreciate with President Trump, is that everything he's done since day one, whatever he's tried, to accomplish, has always been, within that framework in order to be fully legitimate, which we cannot say so much in terms of the other side and what they tried to do.
Exactly. And as far as what you're explaining, one very, very popular technique used by the left has always been projecting. They project what they do and make you the guilty party, like racism, for example. Now, it's the same thing with the coup d'etat. What they did was a clear and obvious coup d'etat. Now they're coming after all of us, claiming that we are the one who's setting one up. I personally, I don't let it bother me, but I can understand it could be bothersome. Sometimes you're like, wait, you just completed your own coup d'etat and you want to tell me I'm the one who's suggesting such a thing? Pretty annoying.
So, I completely agree with you. And it doesn't bother me personally, but I was extremely, extremely upset this past week and I wrote a specific article about this, which Revolver published 2 days ago. What you just said is exactly true, this projection thing. And now, they're trying to call us, I'll include myself, but, they're trying to call us the domestic terrorists, because of this fake they call it an insurrection, what happened on January 6th at the Capitol, when, the whole year, the whole summer, for months in 2020, you had actual domestic terrorists in the name of Antifa and BLM burning down, destroying both federal and private property, as I wrote. And not only did they not condemn it, they encouraged it, with Kamala Harris, funding the bail for some of bail money for some of the arrested rioters. And this projection and the level of gaslighting, the whole past 4 years have been just a huge gaslighting / projection operation. And as I was saying, I just got so upset this week when I saw, and I wrote it in my piece. It took me like 5 days to actually write it down. I was so upset. Every time I went to my computer, I couldn't even find my words, but this latest slander campaign against Trump supporters, calling them terrorists and likening them to Islamic terrorists. I don't know if you saw Eric Swalwell, Sean Penn, Joy from The View, Behar or whatever, the worst of all, General McChrystal, you know, who actually was in Iraq and Afghanistan and know how these terrorists, you know, operate and their ideology. And they are, and Katie Couric, you know, calling for the deprogramming of Trump supporters. I mean, the rhetoric of the past week, I've been watching from here, and I'm not American. I'm an American at heart, as I say. I don't hold a citizenship passport, but I got so angry and upset at this. There are no words for it, but horrendous slander campaign. It's disgusting, disgusting.
Agreed.
So I felt I had to write something about that. Also, you know, I'm in this strange position because of this name, and I felt, you know, I had to say something in defense of all these millions and millions of patriots who are nothing but peaceful and kind. You know, how many Trump rallies, millions, through, if you count all of them together, millions of patriots, not one shop broken, not one act of violence, nothing, zero. Oh, now they're gonna say I did the white supremacy sign. Oops.
No, they're gonna screenshot that. But that's a great point. Manipulation. That's what mainstream media does.
No,
They manipulate everything they can to twist it to where we're the bad guys, they're the good guys. Yes, I did see that. I did see when we were compared to Islamic terror and radicals such as Al Qaeda, and it took me a couple of seconds to catch my breath.
Right.
Again, for someone like me, you know my background, our audience know my background. I was my life was in their hands. To put me in the same boat as them takes a lot of evil. That's the word I use in order to win your agenda, which is Trump bad, Biden good, Trump supporters terrorists, poor little tiny broken oppressed Muslim communities in America need hugs. The narrative is just getting stronger and stronger. But I could talk about that very one topic that killed me inside forever, but I don't want to do that. There is a question, could be a good connection here. You said how you felt, I did. One of our audience is asking if you could describe a little bit more about your family background, of course, with the Bin Laden last name, and if there is anything you want us to learn from what you share with us as far as the family background goes.
Of course. Well, I mean, it is my name because my father is part of that family and I carry my father's name, even though my parents divorced. It is the name I was born with. And I never wanted to change it because I never wanted to lie about who I was or hide anything. Since the age of 14, when the tragic events of 9/11 happened, even though I was, you know, quite young, and my mother took the decision at the time, but it made complete sense to me and I decided to uphold it for, you know, my life. I felt that out of respect, also, you know, for the victims of 9/11, I didn't want to, as I said, lie about this. They deserve to know, if I meet them or, you know, people who I address, they deserve to know who I am. And it is up to me to clearly state who I am, what are my beliefs, and where I stand with regards, you know, to the atrocious attacks that happened on 9/11 and that I condemned, straight away. And yes, it's been strange in the sense that I've never been to Saudi Arabia. I've never set foot in a mosque. I was raised without a religion growing up. So I'm associated to something that is so foreign to me, but to which, I'm forever linked. And it's what it is. Everybody's dealt, hand of cards when they're born, and this is the deck I've been dealt, and it's up to me to make whatever I choose to make with it. And I've decided that I'm not going to hide from it, and I'll stand up and say and share my beliefs. And as I said, in the remarks that I prepared, I knew I lived a very private life. I am a very private person in general, but I just knew it was too important. And because I had this immediate platform, I wouldn't have been able to look at myself in the mirror if I hadn't used it for this very important cause and this crucial time we're living in right now to stand up and defend the president and America and Americans. And this is what I want to do. And it's born out of, as I said, this understanding, but my love for the country. And while I knew it before I came out in September, because of my many travels to America and the reactions that I got, and also the reactions my mother got when she published her book, which, for the person who asked about more details, my background story is recorded in my mom's best-selling book, Inside the Kingdom, My Life in Saudi Arabia, by Noor bin Ladin, which was a New York Times bestseller when it came out 16 years ago, I want to say. But so the reactions that I saw, from Americans when my mom spoke publicly and told our story, and just pure love and warmth and open-mindedness. This is the America that I've known since I was a child, and it was the America that I experienced after 9/11. So when I came out, although I was incredibly moved and overwhelmed and grateful for all the messages I received, I wasn't surprised, because I know that that's, who Americans are, right? And so just to wrap up, so that's the relationship. Osama bin Laden was one of my father's brothers. I've never met him, and I have very limited contact even with my father, because sadly the fallout of my parents' divorce was very acrimonious. So I'm very much in this situation where, yes, there is this whole baggage associated with it, but my values, as I wrote, are completely opposed to the name that I carry.
I hope you don't mind me saying this. I'm not trying to cross any lines or anything, but I actually love that you didn't change your last name. I'm one of those human society type of people. And to me, the beauty of it is you're Noor bin Ladin. You're this beautiful, courageous woman who cares for every other human being, regardless of borders. You go beyond borders to share the compassion you have for freedom. And then there's Osama bin Laden. Do you see what I'm saying? It is so beautiful to give a good sense of compassion to a name. Because, I mean, as you said, you didn't choose, I didn't, nobody chose their family. But how we end up representing the person behind that name or color or face or race is always my whole fight. And for that, I love that you didn't change your last name.
It's just, as I said, the reason was because I didn't want to lie or hide who I am or where I come from. And I do have a first name, you know, this is me, Noor, who is speaking about all these things. And then yes, obviously the last name is what is giving me the platform. But at the end of the day, you know, I am who I am. Osama bin Laden is who he is. He committed his, you know, he decided to live his life the way he, and you know, according to his ideology and his mentality. And it so happens that it couldn't be further from my way of life, my ideology, well, not ideology, but my principles and values.
So you mentioned at some point that you have faith that America will prevail, but is Europe just a total lost cause by now?
Is Europe a total lost cause by now? Western Europe looks very bleak. I know we're not supposed to talk about this because it's racist, but if you just look at the reality of demographics, it's really worrying, you know, especially in places like Sweden, Germany, the UK, you know, the demographics in terms of the Muslim population. And, you know, and obviously, and I've said this in many interviews, it's not, you know, I'm in no way am I lumping, you know, all Muslims, you know, in one basket. You can't do that. There is an ideology that is Islam. I call it an ideology because it's a religion, a political, you know, it has a political agenda and a military, you know, doctrine component to it. So that's why I don't refer to Islam as a religion, but as an ideology. So you have the ideology, and then you have, you know, the 1 point, I don't know how many billion Muslims in the world, right? And you cannot say that everyone applies the ideology in the same way, right? You have on one end the extremists who want to follow it as literally as possible and as it was intended according to the texts. And you have on the whole other end of the spectrum, those who've never even opened the Quran in their life. You know, I'm thinking of, you know, the Lebanese girl I met, you know, once in a bar in London, who looked at me as though I was an alien when I said that the Quran calls for, you know, the killing of Jews and Christians and da, da, da. And she looked at me and she couldn't believe what I was saying, but she considered herself, you know, culturally Muslim. So you have, you know, such a wide array of Muslims, you know, however they decide to follow their faith is another thing. But that being said, the demographics of all these Muslims is increasing, and within these Muslims you have those who are part of the category that believe that Islam should be applied in a literal way, and that group is much bigger than, you know, what we were being led on by the press and the media. Much bigger. So you do have a percentage, as the population grows, the percentage of that Muslim population who believes in a strict literal, as I say, it's better, it's more appropriate, literal application of this ideology obviously grows with it, right? And Western Europe, sadly, pains me to say, is going down, you know, a very dark, has a very dark future that awaits it. You have countries like Hungary and Poland that are going to fare much better. And it's, when you look back at 20th century history, it's incredible to realize that we actually will prefer to live, you know, in a place maybe like Russia than, you know, can you believe it? I'm so sad, it pains me, but the United Kingdom, you know.
That is heartbreaking.
It is really heartbreaking.
Okay, Noor, here's a very last question for you.
Yeah.
Where can our audience go to get more familiar with your work, read your articles, especially your letter to America?
Thanks. The website is noorbinladin.com. However, little precision, the way I write bin Laden is BINLADIN. That's actually the original translation from Arabic. So that's the way it's always been in my passport, and the family, I think, you know, most members write it that way as well, from my understanding. of what I've seen. So it's a question of translation. The media just went with an E at the end. So me, it's Noor bin Ladin, NOORBINLADIN.com. All my writings are on there. Some interviews I've given, in the fall. And I won't really bother to give you, my social media because, Parler's down, and that's another story that is horrible. I am on Twitter, same as my website, at Noor bin Ladin, on Twitter, but let's see how long I have access to that account if they don't ban me at some point, because that seems to be the trend for everyone who's, trying to speak the truth about what's going on in the world. So let's see, but I'll always put information on my website, so please do bookmark it.
Sounds great. So everybody can go to Noor, Noor bin Ladin with an IN at the end.com, and you can check her work out. Thank you so much. I'm very, very, very grateful that you stayed up this late and gave us your time to share your thoughts with us, and hopefully we get to have you back on again.
Listen, it was really my pleasure and an honor to be, on here. So thank you for everyone who tuned in, who asked the questions. I wish I could answer more. And hopefully I get to come and do maybe an event in person. I'll be on the first flight. I say this in all my interviews, but I'll be on the first flight to America as soon as this COVID nonsense restrictions are lifted. I'll be seeing you guys in person.
No, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. And to our audience who stayed with us until now, thank you so much. We appreciate your support. And remember, all these webinars are brought to you by the David Horowitz Freedom Center and the Glazov Gang for free. So if you want to support these webinars, all you need to do is go to frontpagemag.com and consider making a 100% tax-deductible donation. With that being said, stay safe and goodbye.